Katherine pulled away from Philippe's embrace. "I've got to go back and tell them I'm not taking the flight. They'll take the luggage off anyway when I don't show up, but I need to tell them." Bernadette turned the taxi around as soon as she could and drove back to the airport. Philippe took Katherine's hand as he opened the car door, and they rushed back into the terminal. Shaking her head and grinning, Bernadette also got out of the taxi and lit a cigarette. A half-hour later, they were on their way to Antibes. Kat had straightened everything out and arranged for the luggage to be delivered to Philippe's apartment the next day. A calmer atmosphere prevailed in the back seat, but Katherine's heart was still racing from all the excitement as she and Philippe held hands and leaned into each other, exchanging tender kisses along the way. In the years since she turned 55, Kat had journeyed from the nadir of what had once been a contented life to a place where she felt strong, independent, and able to embrace an entirely new existence. Anger, loss, and grief had held her hostage for months, but now love had released the shackles. She was convinced that life was hers for the taking, that she was not too old, that age was no barrier to change and to love. Bernadette dropped them off at Philippe's apartment. Once inside the vintage elevator cage, which had just enough room for two people who needed no personal space, they reached for each other and their lips and bodies locked in passion. After fumbling with the key to the front door, Philippe scooped Katherine into his arms. His dark eyes, intense and glistening, captured hers. Katherine lost herself in them, giving him her body and soul. The heavy door to his apartment slowly sprung open. "They do this in all the American movies, n'est-ce pas?" he said as he carried her across the threshold, making her feel like a young girl. She laughed and was surprised at the deep, sexy tone her voice had somehow acquired. Philippe set her down tenderly, rolled her carry-on into the apartment, gently kicked the door shut, and drew her back into his embrace. Covering each other with kisses, they stumbled down the hall to the bedroom, leaving a trail of clothes behind them. "Welcome home, darling Kat. This is where you belong, chez nous," he said, his lips softly grazing hers, his voice low and throaty. Waves of love rushed through Katherine. They toppled onto the bed in a frenzied tangle, letting their urgency take over. Philippe whispered, "Je t'aime, Katherine. Je t'aime." "And I love you. Je t'aime," she stuttered between gasps. These words, which they previously had held back from saying, they now said over and over throughout a night filled with rapture. When she woke alone in the morning, Katherine found a single gardenia blossom on the pillow beside her. She knew Philippe had slipped back to see if she was still asleep between collecting the cheeses for his stand at the daily market and opening it at 8 o'clock. She pictured him tiptoeing around the bed like a cat burglar and smiled. Where on earth had he found a gardenia on the last day of October? She rose, stretching and yawning, infused with a sense of calm about the impulsive decision she had made at the airport. She had never felt this confident during the years she had meekly allowed herself to be guided by her ex-husband, James. Now she knew that the image of protector James had projected had only been a cover for his selfish control of her life. It had taken intense and raw reflection with a counselor before she was able to face that reality, before she believed that she could change. That, and Philippe's tender love and appreciation of her as a person. When she arrived in Antibes at the beginning of August, it had not taken long for her to fall in love with the enchanting medieval town that glowed in the warm Mediterranean sun. Falling in love with Philippe had been the surprise, a gift. She was briefly tempted to head out to her yoga class now, but decided she needed to take things slowly and consider the consequences of her actions. Once she was up and showered, reality hit her. Was she really doing this, walking away from everything she'd ever known? Yes, she decided, I am. 2 phone calls were in order.